Well, thanks very much and good morning. It's a real pleasure to be with you today, and I want to welcome you and I guess our listeners via the web. This is an exciting time for North Carolina. I think as a state that's been through some rough challenges, and we don't have to recount many of those. I think we're a state busy looking at a new and exciting future. As Donnie alluded to, we've developed a plan called Vision 2030. I think on the upside, we have 3 million more people ready to call our state home. And I think our challenge that you're helping us figure out and embrace is how do we create 1 million jobs? 1 million jobs by 2030. North Carolina will be the 7th largest state in America. Right now, if we were a country, we'd be the 28th largest economy in the world. So plenty of good things going on in our state, but I think the point of today's session is how do you figure out how you can double down on the jobs of the future? Those 1 million jobs won't just happen. They'll happen with smart companies. They'll happen with great talent. Talent, as you know, is the new economic coin of the realm. So there's a lot of talk these days about incentives and what's it take to attract business. In the modern era and in the future era, companies and jobs will go where the talent is. So I think our challenge today, collectively going forward, is how do you make sure this is the #1 state for talent? Not top 10, not top 5. We have to be the best state for talent. And the topic of today is right in the wheelhouse of how we make North Carolina the best state for talent. I'm lucky today to have a great panel that will help navigate our way through that. And the sense from a business community, you probably have a pretty easy sell here if you haven't figured that out. The business community is fully engaged and aware. They're dialed into the opportunities of a knowledge economy and what innovation jobs look like. This is an economy they want to be part of too, and you can help us get there. And that's why I think the future is so bright for our state, because there's a lot of states that are trying to figure out how did we gain such a competitive advantage in a lot of areas. University systems, community colleges almost give us an unfair competitive advantage, and we think that's just fine. And that's how we become the best state for business. That's how we create 1 million jobs. So as we bring our panel up, if I could ask them to take their seats, I'll give you a little bit of background, and then we'll turn the wheel over to them. First is Justin Miller. Justin is a NC State University School of Design graduate and former art director for IBM's internal advertising agency. He is currently CEO and founder of Deja, Inc., and his signature products include web picks. Using Deja and his experience as an example, Justin will focus on social media and the new strategies and technology for enhancing industry's community involvement. Next is Steve Parrott. Steve, welcome. He is president of the Wake County Education Partnership and a former senior state executive for Embark and Sprint. I first met Steve when he was on my board of the North Carolina Chamber, so making the transition nicely into a very important part of our economy. He has 32 years experience in the telecommunication industry. He's also a member of the Global Transpark Foundation Board, past president of the North Carolina Telecommunications Industry Association. He'll talk about using issue-based collaboration between STEM industries and local communities to find synergy between industry, interest, and community initiatives. Finally, Brooks Raiford. He is president and CEO of the North Carolina Technology Association, NCTA. For the past 20 years, he's served in a number of leadership roles in education, construction, and information technology. He currently serves as president of the Dean's Advisory Board for the College of Humanities and Social Science here at NC State. He'll talk about the industry associations and their role in strengthening the connections between industries and communities. So please welcome our panel. Thanks. You want to take us out?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Justin Miller, graduate from NC State, hence the red vans for this morning. Actually, I wanted to just say real quick, with the type of mics that we have, are we going to be doing some sort of dance number up here or something? Or
I hope not.
No, I can say that. So I guess I have sort of a unique position here. I have a startup company in downtown Raleigh called Deja, and we have a product called Web Picks, and we've really done something over the last about 18 to 24 months that hasn't been seen in this area before, and that's our ability to develop and build up a consumer-facing app that is pre-revenue, B2C focused, and take all of that and bring it into this extremely niche market, which was weddings, and scale this into a worldwide product that has surpassed everybody else in our space. This area is typically not known for being able to grow and accelerate consumer-driven products, but I think our team is really paving the way to showcase that it can happen. We recently closed last month a Series A round of fundraising. We had investors from all over the country, venture capitalists as well as angel investors. So it really is proving out that we can do this here. And one of my missions as an NC State alum was to be able to show that we could grow this type of community in this, this type of company in this community because of the fact that there is such rich talent here. I have a team right now of 15, of which the majority are from around this area, but we have been able to attract other developers and other folks that have this entrepreneurial spirit from all over the country to come in and work here and start to accelerate this. So it's really exciting for us, and I think it's a great area. Like I said, great talent. The cost of living here is low, really nice quality of life, and so it's a very intriguing place for us to be able to grow this startup.
Okay. Thanks. Steve?
Okay, well, thank you. I'm a University of Tennessee graduate, and I just didn't think orange tennis shoes would match my outfit today, so, and I do hope we don't do a dance. It's a pleasure for me to be here. As Lou said in the introduction, I'm not an educator. My background's in the corporate world for over 32 years in telecommunications. You might imagine that is a STEM industry. So I've been in public education for the last 3.5 years, working for Wake Education Partnership, which is all about promoting best practices in education, engaging leaders, but here's the key part, connecting resources. So I want to borrow from a theme that is played out already with the first panel, the keynote address, and that is how do we connect with communities across the state and make that connection with the IT industry. And looking at what the industry is interested in, it's pretty obvious, right? A vibrant pipeline of qualified workers. And they'll take those workers from any of our 100 counties across the state. It doesn't matter urban, rural, or wherever you are as a young person, they have an opportunity for you. But part of that problem is, I heard the word awareness, Sam, on the first panel, is awareness in some of the most rural parts of our state. When I was at Sprint, later with Embark, we did an initiative, a public-private partnership in the eastern part of the state. And our company provided telecommunications to 67 of 100 counties, 186 communities, but most of them overlaid the tier 1 counties in the state, the most economically distressed counties in the state. So here I and my company were bringing technology and connectivity to these types of communities. And we just thought that these communities would love us for it, right? The businesses did, local government did, parents not so much. And the reason for that is, if you're in a rural community as a parent, you have the same aspirations many of us do. You want your children to succeed, but you'd like for them to succeed at home. You'd like to think that their opportunities aren't on the West Coast or overseas, right? So the thing that became increasingly important is we had to make what we were doing through our partners and what we were providing through connectivity relevant to their life in that community. You know, we talk all the time about teachers in the classroom aren't there just to present curriculum. They're to present it in such a way that there's relevance in what a child's learning to what the future opportunities hold for them. And the same's true when we reach out to try to connect communities with the STEM industry. We can't just come in, bearing gifts and we're all about science, technology, engineering, and math, because I can assure you, for a lot of people in rural communities, the word STEM, the word engineering, there's some apprehension about that. Their belief is that you have to have a PhD, you have to have a master's degree, you have to have something that certainly they and their children are not capable of accomplishing. A few quick stats. Last year, a study by Burning Glass Technologies showed that there were 5.7 million STEM postings in the United States. 4.4 million of those required at least a bachelor's degree, but 2.2 million of those job postings were entry-level jobs. How many young people come out of college and they're told, I'll hire you, but you have to have 5 years of experience? These are entry-level jobs. So if you look at the math here, in the STEM field, you talk about opportunities, whether it's, again, urban or rural, for each college grad receiving a bachelor's degree, that's 2.5 postings, job opportunities for each recipient. In the non-STEM field, that's like 1.1 posting. Now, how do we take that kind of data and that kind of opportunity? Now, that's at the U.S. level, but I would dare say it's the same here in North Carolina in terms of opportunity. How do we get communities aware of that and why that's important to their community? And the relevance from STEM comes in the areas of education, public safety, management of resources, all of those things that community cares about as part of their quality of life and the basic fabric of the community. So we also need to get the communities and the agencies serving them, as Sam said and the panelists said, on the same page. Communities need a big goal for the community, and all the different assets need to be connected around that same goal. A lot of people in the state, a lot of organizations trying to do really good things, and I applaud them for it, but I've seen it in education. We see it in this type of a topic in the area of STEM. They're not connected. They're not collaborating, and I applaud Sam and his team for the portal that you saw, because that is a great effort, finally, to go to one place and make it easy for people to find out what's already available and then fill in the gaps, and especially in some of these small communities.
Good.
Great. Thanks, Steve.
Brooks? Well, it's good to be here. You know, I think of myself as still being fairly young, and then I come to an event like this, and when I was a student here, Centennial Campus was an idea and a rendering. I remember going around with Claude McKinney and giving presentations about what this campus could be, and then had an opportunity to work for Governor Hunt and raise some money for this library and work with Sam and others in those days. And Dean McKinney, not Dean McKinney, Dean Solomon and I, a quarter century ago, were on a chancellor search committee together. So not as young as I thought I was, I guess, but it is great to be here. I was asked to talk a little bit about the role of associations or groups like mine, business groups, in integrating the business community into communities around STEM. So similar to what you've heard before, but a bit of a unique role for a group like ours. So what can an association really do? We're not heavily programmatic. So how can we contribute? Well, we are essentially conveners. I always say we're like the provider of a sandbox, and getting the right people in the sandbox with the right tools and toys, and then hopefully good things happen. You might do some things to encourage that, but that's really what we are as a convener, or a connector, as Steve was saying. So some of the things that we can do is really, picking up on the awareness theme, is to help employees of our member companies know how and where to get involved. In many cases, the individual, you get right down to the person sitting in cubicle 512, they don't know how to get involved, how to be a mentor, how to get connected. And so we can help showcase examples that exist out there for individuals to get involved, even if it's not something their company structures for them, but it's available to them. So highlighting best practices is something we do. Highlighting those examples of ways to get involved is something that we do. Speaking of mentorships, one of the real challenges in rural areas is we're very lucky here, but this is not the real world for a lot of people. So you're in a rural community, you might come from a family of low means and low educational attainment. What is your network of technology-savvy mentors? You may not have any. So technology can help bridge that gap and connect people who are qualified and willing and eager to be mentors, and maybe even have a distant relationship geographically with a prospective mentee. So that's something that we can help highlight and make possible. We also can demonstrate best practices. So you don't solve the world's problems through demonstration projects, but you can sort of shine a light on good examples. One of the things our association did, and Steve was chairman of my board, and then I was involved in helping hire Steve. So we are all a very incestuous relationship here. And so one of the things that the association did under Steve's leadership and others was to launch technology demonstration projects in schools. And the idea was we were not going to, as an association, improve all schools. But what we can do is go into low-wealth districts around the state, pick an elementary school in this case, apply for and receive federal education funding to go in and really remake that school with the technology and the training for faculty and staff, always key, to revolutionize how that school delivers education and become a role model for what legislators ought to think about and counties ought to think about as they fund the building of schools, the training of faculty, the equipment that's there, the notion that IT and technology is as much a part of infrastructure and is in need of refreshing, just like bricks and mortar and every other part of its infrastructure. So we did that for a number of years and had some really good examples out there now to highlight for policymakers to consider. And I'll end on the notion of policy. So another thing associations do is advocate. And one thing we can do is to help lend a voice, to give a megaphone to issues and points of view on issues that might persuade policymakers to act. For example, funding some of these demonstration projects or funding them more broadly, funding or even considering, we have no position on this topic because it's a new one that's gotten some traction recently, and that is differentiated pay, as is often done in the private sector, for people who want to teach STEM or other high demand fields. Controversial. Do we give more aid to students who are going to pursue STEM college careers because we want them to consider it and walk out with less debt? Those are big policy questions to discuss and debate. So we can help provide a forum and a platform for those discussions. So those are some of the things that we do as an association. No real big surprises there, but I think the biggest theme I would leave you with is being a connector, being a convener, being a platform for discussion and debate, and to provide examples that can be followed or highlight best practices that can be picked up on.
Great. Thanks, Brooks. Maybe kind of opening the door on the public policy side. Steve, I might maybe ask you to weigh in on this question first. I can remember Sam Houston came to visit about a year ago and said, we have these Common Core state standards that every state in America is busy embracing, and we're one of 45 states that have done so. But let's put an effort in place to make sure that happens. And at that time, I thought, well, gee, how tough could that be? But obviously, we're finding it's a challenge. I think some states have, at least 5 have opted out. And I think there's a lot of discussion in this state and information, good and bad. Many of you know Carl Rectanis. Carl's in the audience today. Carl is spearheading the work in our foundation around that. But maybe, Steve, from your vantage point, and Carl uses the term a lot, that this is sort of the table stakes for this discussion. So if you're serious about STEM and participating in the next economy, Common Core is kind of the table stakes. So maybe kind of give me your perspective on what you're seeing.
Okay, I'll start with a basic premise and understanding, and that is that any child, given a high expectation and the resources to achieve it, can do it. Too many times we look at the socioeconomic status of some of our students, and before they even start school, we're already ready to say, well, they're not going to be a good student. So that's where, when you look at Common Core state standards, or you can call them whatever you want to, some states now, I think it's kind of interesting because of the politics around Common Core state standards, they're now calling it something else. The bottom line is we do need to set higher standards in the classroom for our students. When I went to school, and I won't tell you how long ago that's been, basic memorization skills were enough to kind of get you by. And only did I learn when I went to higher education, where, I came out of high school and I was in the top 10 people in my class. I go to the University of Tennessee, and I found out real quick there were
12 in your class?
There were 11. There were 11 in my class, so I was number 10. Poor 11 guy, right? I don't know if he's working today or not. But I went to University of Tennessee, and I thought, I had a basic good preparation. In first calculus class, hands went up, and a lot of the kids from the Northeast said, I've already had calculus. And here I'm sitting there wanting to brag because I'd had trigonometry. My point is this: Common Core state standards are getting wrapped, unfortunately, in the politics of education. And I know there's politics in everything, But if you would just take a step back, and instead of looking at, race to the top or is the federal government setting our standards for us and that, I can assure you they're not here in North Carolina. But the basic thing for North Carolina is we need to set high standards and have rigor in our classrooms. We need to give teachers the resources they need to teach children to actually attain those standards. We need to have parents that don't get so wrapped up in, I want my child to be a straight A student. I was a straight A student in high school, but I just told you I wanted to school, to higher education or to a job. I didn't have good preparation making straight A's. I would have been better off to have made C's with more rigor in my classroom. And so I hope that's where the focus can get back to. Forget, in a way, what's going on in other states. Focus in North Carolina, additional rigor in our classroom, but also how do we assess that? Because the assessments are coming under great scrutiny. We talk about how much it costs to do the assessments. But can you imagine an assembly line in a manufacturing company, and you've got a product, right, that you've spent a lot of money developing, and it's going down the assembly line, and you say, but we can't afford quality control. I mean, we're just going to produce the product and just hope that it works. In a way, that's what we're doing with our students when we talk about we're going to shortchange them in terms of how we're going to assess their progress. I'm not a proponent of more and more tests and tests and tests, but you got to find out where students are so you know what their needs are, and you need to differentiate your teaching around that.
Can I pick up on that for a second? Two things. One, you're absolutely right about the importance of elevating standards. But in addition to that, at the Friday Institute a while back, some of you were in the room, Governor Hunt made the observation that, I hadn't even thought about it this way, North Carolina is a pretty big military state. So a lot of people in the military move around a lot. Students, therefore, move around a lot. And we're in an increasingly mobile society. So as students move, families move from state to state, not to mention county to county, but state to state, to have some commonality in what they are able to do in third grade, et cetera, has some practical meaning. And the other thing to think about is here we are talking about counties and states and so on. That's our mindset. We don't ever talk about some little region of Finland doing really well in education. We talk about other countries, Singapore. We don't talk about some little town in Singapore. Yet that's what we're talking about. We talk about Wake County. We talk about North Carolina with respect to the country. So I think the initiative, which was state-led and governor-led, is essential for us to have a level of quality, a level of expectations, and a level of service that we owe the students, particularly those who are going to move around during the course of their educational career.
That's a great point. And Justin, this might kind of tie to your expertise and background, but there's a lot of discussion and there's opportunities with rooms like this of people that are in the education space, leaders, thought leaders. From a top down, there's a logic to this discussion that you kind of say, well, geez, what's wrong with that? But maybe give us some thoughts on how, from the bottom up, because what often gets missed a lot of times is how you connect with the students. And a lot of the activity that some of these groups are busy doing, that doesn't make it to the student level, but are there some social media opportunities to kind of reach? Because when you think about it, the folks we're trying to energize and excite the most about their future are the people that aren't in this room today. They're busy sitting in a classroom, and that's our future. But a lot of noise gets in the way. The press, right wing, left wing, superintendents, teachers, well-meaning folks. But is there kind of a bottom-up opportunity that we might be missing?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question, and I work with a lot of students right now as sort of having them come in and shadow us, or we have interns that spend a semester with us at a time. And I think there's something that is still missing from an educational standpoint that I felt when I was in school. And as much as I loved my experience at State, I felt like there was a shortcoming in the preparation for real world. And something that Steve touched on was this idea about when you graduate college, they're looking to hire people that already have real world experience, and who has that when you just get out of school. And so something that I focus on when I speak to people, having gone through graduating college, starting at a corporate job, doing the daily 9-to-5 grind, and really just experiencing this lifestyle it was enjoyable, and it was a great opportunity to prep me, but it wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do. And with so many students coming out of school and saying, I have an opportunity now to do something with my life, why do they want to just go and fall into this sort of conveyor belt like so many people do, where they could come into a startup style opportunity or pave their own path. So I think it's really important to be able to speak with them and for them to understand that you don't have to just go out and look for a job that already exists, but challenge that and say, I want to create something. I want to go work for this company, but that job doesn't exist. I'm going to tell them this is the job that I want to offer to that company. Especially when you look at a lot of these larger companies that overshadow this area that this area is known for, which is the big tech companies. When I was coming out of school, it was who's going to IBM, who's going to Cisco, who's going to Red Hat, and figuring out, and maybe I don't have what the needs that meet these current openings, but let me come in with the skill set that I have and the vision that I have and prove to these companies that I can carve out something that is specific to what I can bring to the table. And I think it's that sort of mentality and trying to get that into these students' minds, that they don't have to just look for the openings that are there right now, but rather figure out new ways that they can present themselves, be it at a 15-person startup company like mine or at a 10,000-person company like some of these big companies around the area. So I think it's just something that sort of changing that way that people think, like, I don't have to go do this next, but I have an opportunity to sort of pick what my destiny is going to be.
Well, and maybe Brooks, to pick up on that, I think a lot of companies are sort of recognizing the point Justin's observed, which is there's probably no such thing anymore as bring me my skilled workforce. Mm-hmm. I think more and more of your members, I know some of the companies we work with, are talking about apprenticeship opportunities and kind of recognizing that the community college training and or university training kind of gets you to the door, but maybe any kind of insights you have in some of your member companies that are kind of recognizing apprenticeships are, back to the topic, how do we engage the STEM industries with North Carolina? That's kind of a recognition where at least some kind of partnership needs to exist.
That's true. I think NC State's a great example of an institution that does that very well and always strives to do more of that. We had a tech job fair right here at McKimmon Center yesterday with a couple dozen employers with over 2,000 jobs to fill, and I was talking to one of them, and nobody can find programmers, enough of them, and certain skills, so they run their own in-house university where they hire students who have some degree of training expertise and so on, and aptitude, and then they bring them in and give them the precision training they need for that company, and they have a very high retention rate because they've invested in these students. The students are going to earn more than they would have made going into another job somewhere else without that training. So that's one example. Internships and apprenticeships are increasingly important. Companies come to this area. One of the first things they do is ask us how to connect with NC State, which is terrific. And so there's a lot of great programs. What I see a lot, you mentioned I was the president of the CHAS board and work with the College of Engineering is a member of ours, the College of Business School is a member of ours, and others. So we work across disciplines, and I would hope the institution would be aggressive about making sure that entrepreneurship programs and those sorts of things are everywhere, that the students in every college, no matter what their skill sets are or pursuits are, have encouragement to engage in those kinds of externship opportunities, chances to engage, chances to be creative, to start businesses, to be encouraged to work with people like Justin and make those connections. There's some great stories already, percolating out of NC State along those lines, so I think those are very important. The community colleges play an important role there too, and they're more physically present around the state. That's a great network to tap into as well.
Great, thank
you. One quick point to piggyback off of that. My company is located in the HQ Raleigh downtown, and we're maybe a little over a mile from NC State. We have 72 startup companies in this space. And I would venture to say if you walk around anywhere on campus and ask people if they know about Raleigh's startup scene, no one's going to know what's going on here. And so I think making it a mission to expose that scene to these students in conjunction with the scene that they already see of the large tech and these large companies that surround the area, because I think that can help, further just give them more examples of what they can do with themselves after college. I think just that exposure needs to be something that we focus on here as a community, because you have such a wide range now in this area. And that was something that I didn't even know existed. A little quick side tangent. My company was located at my house for 2 years in my basement, true startup style. The folks at the city got wind of that and they didn't like it. So one day somebody came with an eviction notice, and that's how we landed at the HQ Raleigh downtown. It's a crazy story. Wound up with the silver lining was really great with it. But all of a sudden we were exposed to what this area had to offer. And while we were working in my house, we only knew my company around here. And we always thought about the startup scene being on the West Coast or in the Northeast. And there's a huge scene here in Raleigh that I just think needs to continue to gain that exposure, because maybe these kids will ultimately become the ones that go into the next Red Hat leaders or the next IBM leaders. But this is a great place for them to start, where they can make a true impact in a small company before they take whatever that next step is.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment. We've talked about the educational system and the role of that in connecting IT companies and developing young people for careers in STEM. But this isn't just an educational responsibility. Obviously, the formalized educational network we have in North Carolina is the best portal for engaging young people towards some meaningful career path. But think about how much time our children spend outside of the classroom and what happens during that time. And so there are a number of examples of where IT companies are investing in classroom, but also outside of classroom. And one example that comes to mind is at Marvel's Kids Museum in Raleigh. ABB passed their sign on the way in this morning, invested $1 million in Marvel's Kids Museum to create the Kids Grid. That'll be opening in June of 2014. So what's the Kids Grid about? People think kids go to Marvel's to play. What can you get out of playing, right? Playing with this grid will teach these young people why it's important to make smart energy choices, number one. And number two, it might just interest some of these small kids that when they grow up, they might want a career in the energy space. I mean, ABB, if they invested $1 million, must see some importance in that. You look in our museums, you look in our after-school programs that we have through community organizations. That's a really good place to engage some of these young people in what I'll call the underrepresented students that maybe outside of school don't have a lot of the opportunities that others have, where they can engage and find out at a young age what those career pathways are. The point here, just like focusing on literacy, you got to start early. We can't career path in STEM and wait until they get in high school. I don't know what the right point is, but, the museum example I gave, those are young children. I mean, it's never too early to start with some of these kids and exposing it to them. I've got a 4.5-year-old granddaughter that teaches me how to use the iPad, and every day has asked me, Granddad, have you got any new kid apps? 4.5 years old, okay? So that's what we really need to be reaching these children and building that expectation and that desire to where they want a career in STEM and supporting them throughout that continuum.
That's a great point. And I guess, Steve, maybe a final question to you, and I think we have some audience questions too. Nobody can have the kind of corporate experience you've had over multiple companies, multiple environments over time, and maybe on the topic of change, because I think to say we're going through a time of disruptive innovation in North Carolina and in America in education is probably an understatement. But I guess for this audience and for our listeners, as a seasoned business executive that has seen their business model change numerous times at speed, what lessons or what advice would you give this group around change and innovation and how critical it is to kind of be at the front end of that and how to adapt to it?
Well, I appreciate that. 32 years in the business, that's what happens when you get old, I guess. You have a wealth of experience, but I tell people I'm an expert of change management and paradigm shifts. I did all those in my corporate life. I'm also a merger and acquisition specialist. Many industries, but telecommunications in particular, when you look at the changes there, I started in 1977 when we were the only game in town. We were a true monopoly. And if we hadn't changed along the way, when competition came into our industry and learned to be a lot more nimble in decision-making, and also making sure we're on the leading edge of technology, if we weren't also doing internal development of employees, not just in the technical skills, but also in leadership development, there's a way to teach change management. Part of it is just communicating, obviously, regularly about the change as you're going through it. Nobody really likes change or wants to embrace change, but when you know how that's going to affect you directly and understand that if your company doesn't change and doesn't embrace change and doesn't embrace competition and doesn't embrace new technology, you get left behind and you find yourself sitting on the curb unemployed. That's a pretty good motivational factor for accepting change. But we see change, certainly in public education as well. You mentioned the Common Core and the number of things we're doing there. Unfortunately, our educational system is not keeping up with the changes that we're seeing in the 21st century. I love it when we're talking about 21st century skills, and here we are in 2014. At some point, we got to realize we're there, right? And we're going to have to change. So educational system, the corporate sector, we really need to, when we bring in new employees and even young people in the school systems, teach them that change is a good thing. And embracing technology and new ideas is a good thing.
Thanks. Questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Justin, when you were raising money for your company, did you have a hard time convincing your investors that you could scale and grow your company in this particular place?
Yeah, definitely. I've raised 3 rounds of funding so far for our company, and each time it seems to get a little more difficult because I'm dealing with larger scale investors. Like I said earlier, this area is not known for the type of company that we are, and from the beginning we had people saying, you guys have to get out of there, you need to move to Silicon Valley or to the Northeast to really be able to grow this company, and I was determined to prove that we could do it here. And so we're going to run into some geographical issues with certain investors because a San Francisco investor may not want to invest in a Raleigh company just because it's a pain to get over here, vice versa. But we were able to prove that we could do this here. We could accrue the talent necessary to scale the company at the rate that we have scaled. And in doing so, we have started to attract new investors into this area. And so that was a really big goal that we achieved as a company, was to be able to bring those here and show that we could do this. And hopefully, as we continue to move forward and carry this momentum, more companies like ours in the consumer space or in the B2C, pre-rev especially, can start to gain that funding, and this area can start to shift away from the traditional tech startups that have prospered here and move into more of these West Coast style startups in this area.
We have a question that came in from one of our live stream guests. It says several panelists have talked about collaboration across different institutions, but how do we do that in a resource challenged environment? So the question is, how do we need to look at different types of funding streams, whether we're talking about fee-based programs, or what role does government or private funding play into that?
I think it makes it all the more essential that there's collaboration. Not everybody can offer everything. So in that environment, you take best practices or best competencies and find ways to make those available across institutions, across even sectors, in this case of education. There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of political commentary about, gee, we operate in silos. Of course, any institution, particularly of size, has its challenges. Bureaucracy by its nature is not conducive to creativity and innovation, but we can get around that, and if you're purposeful about it. NC State's a great example of an individual institution that does it and tries to do it all the time. But I think the community colleges, the private colleges and universities, the K-12 system, and public universities are doing a lot of great things already, and there's terrific opportunity to expand that and to be efficient in doing so.
The thing I would say is when I was in the industry, we always talked about communities that weren't connected. They didn't have bandwidth. They didn't have access to high-speed internet. We may not be at 100%, but I will tell you that we have an abundance of capacity. The thought that you would have a gigabit connection, I can remember the day if we could do 10 megabit, people will be going, oh my goodness, that's like the speed of light when it comes to the internet, right? So the technology's there. The key,
Buffering.
exactly. The key now is content. We blamed the pipe before. The pipe is there. The North Carolina Network, for example, MCNC, and the work that they've done with partners to build out this network to connect K-12, community colleges, university system, healthcare, et cetera, is in place. We need to utilize that with content. And the beauty of that is, it's like the portal, Sam. I mean, again, if you're connected, I don't care where you are, you can find out what's available in your area, or you can somehow stream to your area some content that will help develop students, citizens, et cetera, on STEM opportunities. So that's really, sometimes we think we're resource poor, but there are resources in place that, frankly, some of these communities just don't know about.
From a government standpoint, I think looking at more incentives, especially to keep people around this area, looking at the postgraduates as well as the people who are looking to maybe make a change in what they're doing on their day-to-day. A specific example for us, we were pursued pretty hard from the folks up in Washington, D.C. about moving our company there with this laundry list of incentives as to why we should go to D.C. And I actually brought that back to some of the folks that I know here in the city and said, what is Raleigh doing for us? And ultimately, I wasn't going to move to D.C., but looking at sort of that offering of what these other cities around the country are doing to incentivize people to stay in that area, move into that area, and grow their businesses in that area. I think that that's something that I'd love to see the government locally be able to offer something with the idea that they're gonna work on the ground up blossoming of these companies and not just focusing on these large scale companies in the area.
Hey, Justin, can I ask you a question? Can I ask him a question? Mark Cuban did something really unusual the other day. He said something controversial. 20 things that day. But anyway, two things caught my attention. One was he said that he was asked specifically about the Raleigh Triangle area and our attempt to brand ourselves as a startup-friendly place and so forth. And he said that's backwards. You should de-emphasize all the startups and the startup activity. You should emphasize successes, acceleration. What are the outcomes that you can brag about? We need to do more of that, and companies that are bigger need to help make that happen and show what they're investing in and so on. So that was an interesting point of view. But he also said there's too many accelerators. Too many incubators. That he said a startup gets into an incubator space and think they've achieved something. That was his quote. What do you think about that? You live in this world and you've done those things and been out of and in incubator spaces. What do you think about his comments?
Oh, I 100% agree with that. To the first comment about there needing to be more success stories, absolutely, because nobody is going to, there's no drive if you just hear about all of these companies that have ideas that are trying to make something work. The drive to the Valley is because you have Facebook that's come from there, and you have LinkedIn, and you have these giant successes and the Twitters of the world. Now, sure, those are the 1 in a million companies, but there's a tremendous amount of companies that have had very nice exit for their founders, oftentimes their first go at a startup, that then puts them in a position that they can do whatever they want out of their next opportunity. I like to think that I'm a realist. I don't think that WedPix is going to be a $1 billion company, but I think that WedPix has an opportunity to have a very nice exit for this area, which can help to really spur that and get people excited about not only our startups existing here, but people can exit here. Early on, we had an offer from a public company out of New York to acquire us, and we turned it down. It was 2 months after we launched. But that was incredible validation for us as a team to say, look, we're this little team in Raleigh. We're a bunch of dudes that look like me that are in the wedding space. Like, we have no business doing what we're doing, but we're doing it well. And so being able to use that as further validation for us as a company and to prove we have an opportunity to succeed and show that Raleigh can have nice exits that aren't these gigantic 100 million plus, as much as that would be everybody's dream, kind of rein it back into reality and say we can get companies like this that can exit here, that makes it much more desirable for the startups. And to the second point, yes, the whole idea of an accelerator or incubator, it's a title for where your office is located. We're in a co-working space, and that's just where we are. And I don't think that doesn't really matter to me. I think that it's a matter of being able to provide resources, going back to the government comment of what could potentially be done for up-and-coming startups, housing them somewhere so they don't have to work illegally in their house. Those are the kind of things that I think that we need to focus on and not be so worried about the title or the branding or what we're going to call this for this area, but how we can make what we have here better.
Listening to Justin reminds me that I wish there was a place in our core curriculum for teaching children entrepreneurism. Whether they desire to one day go out and start their own business or not, when you listen to Justin, that resonates with young people, the opportunity to start your own business. You may not think that you can, but here's a great example of there are opportunities out there. But just all the mindset and the thinking that goes into being an entrepreneur translates into whatever career that you decide you want to do. And it really would find a great place, I think, in our core curriculum.
Absolutely. We have time for more questions?
About 2 more questions, one here.
Good morning. My name is Linda Love, and I'm from North Carolina Central University. But what I really am is a STEM entrepreneur. And so what I want to report is that young people are really on the entrepreneurship game. When they come to campuses now, they ask questions not about majors, but can I get a major or minor in entrepreneurship? So it's there. And I just think being a curriculum person, there's space in the curriculum already. I just think teachers need to take advantage of it. One more point, the Kaufman Foundation has been doing this for years. So they have funding, teachers can apply, put a little store in their classroom, and make what they're doing very relevant. So it's there.
Great point.
Before we go, I do want to get Justin to comment on something. Justin, when I was looking for searching out panelists, and be kind of very, very directive about who we put on panels, so to make sure we're getting some serious bang for our buck in terms of the information they bring to the table. You're doing some interesting things with respect to social media, and then also you went with the city of Raleigh down to South by Southwest recently. And so that's kind of like a very different model for our new entrepreneurs are getting involved in their communities. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was a really cool opportunity that I won. I submitted this video about why I should go down to Austin and represent Raleigh for South by Southwest, and I went with some of the city of Raleigh folks. The mayor came with us, and we took an RV from Raleigh to Austin, which was, in theory, a lot better than in reality. The mayor did not ride with us the entire way. She caught on the back end, which she made the right decision with that. But getting down there, we had an opportunity. We had a booth set up in the interactive section of South by, and I just had an opportunity to talk to people about the Raleigh startup scene and the Raleigh tech scene. And a lot of people don't associate Raleigh with either of those things. And so it was really a great opportunity to get out there and just say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and this is what Raleigh has to offer. And I think the idea of social media, what Donnie just said, and actually something that you had asked about earlier, Lou, was that how can you use social media to really push this out? And I think the number one thing that has to take place if you're going to leverage social media is you have to be true in that. Far too many companies or businesses or brands try to use social media because they know of the outreach that it can that it has, but it's robots that are pushing this out, and people will call you out as soon as they see that happen, and then it completely basically your brand is done at that point. And so I think it's important to be able to show that you have people like the mayor that will retweet things that I say out to her audience, and that she's standing in the booth with us talking about Raleigh and what the opportunities are in this area, and that you can leverage social media in a way and an outreach that that goes beyond what we have been able to do in the past in terms of letting people know about what this area is and what it has to offer and who the players are in the space.